are going to start in 2 seconds. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Samantha Barrett, and I'm the Assistant Director of Regional Engagement for the Southeast U.S. I thank you all for being with us this evening, and I hope that you are all healthy and safe. During this time of social distancing, the Rutgers University Alumni Association is offering virtual programs to highlight the important work being done at the university and around the world by our alumni and to help keep alumni connected. Tonight, we are honored to have with us Peter March, Executive Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, who joined Rutgers in July of 2014 after several leadership roles at The Ohio State University. Dean March also chaired the U.S. National Committee for Mathematics and in 2017 was named as a Fellow of the American Association of the Advancement of Science. And we are honored to have with us Abby Melone, 2005 Rutgers College graduate who began life post-college as a professional dancer, then switched lanes to a career within her second passion, traveling. After having a 10-year international career in business development, she settled in Miami, Florida, where she started Capital Analytics, and for the past 6 years has grown the media company from covering 1 market to 9, producing annual economic reports, conferences, and video content. Just a bit of housekeeping. All attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of this discussion. If you have questions, please send them via the chat option at the bottom of your screen. We will get to as many questions as possible. And it's now my privilege to turn it over to Executive Dean Peter March.
Well, thank you, Sam, and good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm joining you from my living room. I'm usually in a suit and a tie, even in Florida, but today I'm in civilian clothes. And I checked this with Abby, and it's okay. So I've been in the business for a long time, and frankly, I've just never seen anything quite like this. In a weird sort of way, I feel very privileged to be on the front lines of higher education in such a really challenging and set of trying times. Just a few snippets of what's happening at Rutgers, just to sort of keep you up to date. We're actually getting a lot of national attention for a medical breakthrough that occurred on campus just recently. Our researchers in the School of Arts and Sciences and the Rutgers Cell and DNA Repository just recently got SNAP FDA approval for a saliva test for the COVID. And this is being rapidly ramped up and used in concentric circles from Rutgers to New Jersey, and soon it'll be across the country. So that's one thing we're doing to actually help directly with the pandemic. A month ago, a little bit more, we transitioned to 100% online education. In our school, SAS, there are 4,000 classes being taught online to about 30,000 students, and miraculously, it's going quite well. And so we're looking ahead to the end of the semester where we can't have a commencement in person, but we're looking at some very, very creative ways to honor our students and congratulate them virtually. So just a snapshot from what's happening here in New Brunswick. So we're really, really excited to have, it's a treat really to be able to talk to Abby Melone, to have her here with us tonight from Florida, from Miami. As Sam mentioned earlier, Abby started life here at Rutgers as a Mason Gross student and a dancer. Her career started as a professional dancer, and she performed with Liza Minnelli and on MTV, Video Awards, among other things. But tonight she's joining us as an economic expert, expert in several cities, providing advice to leaders and connecting people. I have to say that's a fairly unique transition that I'm interested to hear a bit about. So Abby, before we get started with Florida and COVID-19 and all of that, I'd just love to know how you started out in Mason Gross and how you landed in Miami.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, Peter, and Rutgers for having me here. I've lived many places in the world. And although I have my home in Miami, I'm a very proud Rutgers graduate and a very proud New Jerseyan. So it's a delight to be here tonight. I've had a lot of interests in my life, and I think that that's the short answer to why I've done so much and ended up in kind of like this strange trajectory. But I started dancing when I was 10. And which is kind of late for a dancer. You usually see these little, 2-year-olds, a little tutu standing on stage. That wasn't me. I started much later, and it became a huge passion of mine, and led me to ultimately Rutgers at Mason Gross. I was also part of the dance team, and the other passion that I've had is travel. And for whatever reason, I knew when I was about 12 years old that I needed to study abroad. I needed to do it. And so I also took that opportunity when I was at Rutgers, and I studied abroad twice, first in Spain and then secondarily in Argentina. And so I was also very into academics. I loved to study. And so it was a perfect place for me to go to Rutgers because I got accepted into this Rutgers College, which has changed now. And also Mason Gross. And so when I decided that I didn't want to graduate as a dance major, I was easily able to transition into a highly competitive academic environment, which was wonderful. And so when I left the dance major and I was still on the dance team for a little bit, I was commuting up to New York because it's only 30 minutes, 45 minutes by train. And I was in the right class at the right time with the right choreographer, and he asked me if I was available to dance backup for Liza Minnelli. And of course, my answer was yes. And the professors at the time were very lenient towards me having to take a little bit of time off to fly to London and perform there. And then that summer, I performed at Royal Albert Hall with her, on Broadway with her. And then did some performances with MTV and so on. But then I also did the study abroad, and ultimately when I graduated, I had itchy feet and needed to see the world, and so I ended up working for a British research and consultancy firm for just under 9 years. Spent the majority of my career in the Middle East, a little bit Asia, and I ended up in Miami because I was spearheading all of our opening into Latin America. I was first boots on the ground for Colombia, Mexico, Peru, Panama, and it was then when I realized that the kind of reports that we were doing on emerging markets didn't actually exist for many US markets. And I started to ask myself why, these investor guides that are geared towards getting your head wrapped around a certain economy vis-a-vis our own analysis and these in-person interview with leading executives. And so that's why I ended up committing to Miami, because I started the first report that we did on Invest Miami and have grown from 1 market to 9 markets in just under 5 years. While keeping dance on the side. Is still now a little less because I have an almost 11-month-old. So she's been taking up a little bit of my time, but still fitting in salsa on the side and different dance.
Excellent. So I mentioned that we've been here in sort of stay-at-home orders and social isolation for a month or 6 weeks now. It'll end at some point, but not next week. And I just wonder how this whole phenomenon of the knock-on effects of the virus pandemic are affecting you and your business in Miami.
Well, we're absolutely not immune. Obviously the state of Florida has also been under shelter in place. The governor announced that a little bit later than the northern states, and we've kind of been watching that throughout all the states that we cover, the differences in the closing of businesses, the operation of essential business versus not essential, and stay-at-home orders. And so we are essential business in media, so we have the ability to work from the office, but we've also, I've made it not obligatory, so I have colleagues that are working from home. We did have to go through some furloughs and layoffs when this all started, and that was the hardest time, hands down, in being an entrepreneur for me. A lot of sleepless nights, and I feel for everyone who's in that position. That I guess there's some kind of misery to get communal commisery in all of this, because no one is unaffected by this. And so, yeah, it's been tough, but I guess the best thing out of this is really watching everyone who is on board step up in amazing ways. And I'm so blessed to have the team that I have with me right now.
Right. And so you see, I spoke a little bit about Rutgers and your own company, but you're by the nature of your work, you see a lot of different cities, different economic sectors. And of course, on one hand, we're all dealing with this, but do you see some differences, some similarities with how the different sectors and different cities are handling it?
Yeah, so basically to do the reports that we do, the purposes of all our events, our digital content, our annual reports are twofold. One is to let the local, national, and international investor, entrepreneur, or business person know what are the economic opportunities and challenges in market. And then number two is to promote the markets in which we operate as a place to come and do business. And we're unique in our approach in that over the course of about 6 months, we speak to over 200 top CEOs in market to put together this annual report. And so our access is really strong to the people who are making waves in the markets that we cover. And so to go back to your point about how the different industries and the different areas have been affected, it's similar and different. So obviously, the vast majority of businesses have had to learn how to work in a virtual world. And, we luckily operated already in, I would say, about a 60%, 70% capacity in virtual world. And so we were able to adapt relatively quickly. We're talking about like hours that we were adapting some of our employees to use a Zoom and GoToMeetings. I'm sure many other businesses were in the same.
Yeah, you have to be nimble.
And then you see a lot of entrepreneurs who are stepping up in unique ways to assist healthcare professionals, providing new platforms, revising what they're testing to help towards COVID-19. A lot of research centers now also revising to tackle COVID-19. So I think across the board, many of the leaders that I'm speaking to are leaning into the situation and seeing how they can be a solution maker because it's uncharted water for everyone.
It's really unprecedented. We're extraordinarily proud of our basketball team here at Rutgers. Steve Peichel has done a fabulous job, and kind of feel for the kids because after a long road and a lot of hard work, they were invited to March Madness, and of course that couldn't take place, and so that's a victory, but it's a little tough on the kids. But that started me thinking, it's not clear that there's going to be a college football season in the autumn. We don't know what's going to happen to many of the professional sports leagues, and I wonder if that's hitting Miami in a particularly hard way, because if I'm not mistaken, the National Football Championships were scheduled to be held there.
Yep, so many large-scale events have already been canceled. I've watched a lot of conferences. Orlando is a huge conference and expo center, nationally speaking, and many have been canceled. Many have been postponed. A lot are starting to adapt to new virtual expos, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that continues to unfold. And I've watched a couple, tutorials on how they're trying to create networking and create some kind of connection, virtually speaking. But yes, Miami's had to cancel a huge music festival called Ultra that happens every year. It's a huge revenue driver for the region. There are events. We host events each and every year for all the markets that we cover, and it's anywhere between 250 to 450 attendees. And it's high-level networking, high-level panel discussion. We bring those books in live format and discuss everything from tech to real estate to meds and eds up in Philadelphia.
And meds and eds, I like it.
Meds and eds. And so we're going to have to really revise that. And if we are hosting the event, what is the state saying about gathering and how many people can we have? And that's going to be on sports teams' minds. That's going to be on concerts. We have so many concerts coming through all these venues. Can they have it, and in what capacity? And so that's really going to be ultimately up to the state governments to mandate, and then everyone work around that.
Yeah, that's going to be a real challenge. I'm glad it's above my pay grade. We have to protect ourselves, and we have to make steps to open up the economy. And this is a very tough set of decisions. Not
Yes.
quite sure how that's going to go.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as I understand it, well, we all know Florida has always been a great moving destination. Probably there's more U-Hauls in Florida than in any other place. Has your work with chambers of commerce given you any insight that you can share with us about how this current situation is changing the real estate patterns in the country?
Yeah, so the feedback that I'm getting from a lot of the developers or brokers that I'm speaking to is that, at least in the commercial space, that we were, and it depends obviously in the specific metro area that we're talking about, but in areas like Orlando, Tampa, and Miami, there was an undersupply of office. And so when we get on the other end, most developers and brokers are quite confident that the space will either be used in its primary or secondary to lease out. In terms of residential, I think that story has yet to be written. I think a lot of new developments, we've already seen them be called off or postponed, and that's probably prudent, so we can see what what the demand will be, because the demand is changing right now. People are losing their jobs and don't have the income that they used to. People are now not going to be looking for a big move. So many different factors are weighing in that I think that if the project is ongoing right now, it will complete, but we won't see as many new projects on the other end of this.
Right. That's very interesting. These lags and sags in the real estate industry are always fascinating to watch. So of course, all businesses are affected. Universities are affected. We're all affected, right? And it'll be interesting to see how this all works out. I was just curious to know how Capital Analytics is handling it. How are you doing?
We're good. We're good. And the adaptation has been trying at times, and we've had to be put in uncomfortable situations, but everyone has really rise to the challenge. And one of the areas where we've really expanded is our digital video content. And we're getting so much feedback, globally speaking, on and reader write-in. What is happening in market right now? Because while national media is all well and good, it really muddies the water on a local level. So what we immediately did, and this was maybe 2 weeks into the transition, is we started a series on COVID-19 and the business community's response to it. Right now, all those videos are up on our YouTube page. They're on our website. One was playing as this webinar was about to begin. That has been wonderful for our audience to know what is happening in the moment. So for example, national media is talking about the surge in hospitals. But for many of the hospitals that we speak to, thank goodness, they're not experiencing that surge. And that's the good side of that story, right? That they feel well prepared, they have the PPE that they need, they have all of the staff that is ready to go. The other side of that story that we're starting to talk about is, because all the elective procedures have been put off, hospitals are actually financially struggling. So while they're prepared for a surge, they might not see that surge. And then in the meantime, they're having to put off all their elective procedures and not making the income that they're normally making. So a lot of rural areas, a lot of cities that have not seen the amount of cases that we were expecting, they're being very hard hit. And that's going to be a story that we need to definitely follow, because you do not want to be on the other side of this with a failing hospital system.
No. Wow, we're really feeling this here up in New Jersey. So, the surge it basically crossed over New Brunswick last week. That's a little bit dramatic, but that's sort of what happened. And I feel like it's sort of moving south. Hope it doesn't come back. But this, it really has been a challenge for our university hospitals and our RWJ Barnabas. Very happy to say the surge basically went right up to the bleeding edge of capacity of our hospitals, and it's just starting to go down. So we're blessed. B, it's been a challenge for the basic revenue and business structure of our hospitals. So we hope to see a little bit of a rebound there.
Yeah.
Right. So the great Yogi Berra had many, many wonderful aphorisms, one of which was predicting is hard, especially the future. You want to take a crack at it?
Oh, goodness. Well, I will first say no one has a crystal ball, and I am definitely not one of those people to have said crystal ball. However, I think that there's a couple things to keep in mind. I think that we definitely have to be prepared for a second surge after we start opening businesses, whenever that moment may be. I do not think that it is a good idea to have a blanketed opening, and most states are already releasing plans where they're considering certain industries, keeping social distance in those various businesses, and that story still needs to be written and understood, because I think one of the problems with the shelter-in-place measures is that there was a lot of confusion. People didn't understand when it was affecting them and why, or state versus federal, local versus state. And we need our leaders to really come together and set a plan. You look at states like Georgia. Governor Kemp has already announced that he's going to start opening businesses this week. Yet that was met with a lot of pushback.
There's a lot of pushback with that.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And I was comparing some figures, and in Georgia, they have a population of 10 million and 20,000 cases of COVID. In Florida, we have a population of 21 million, so double, and 27 cases, and we're not opening. So you think that they would feel it more and be a little bit uncertain to open up, but you know, each and every state is different. Politics are playing a huge place here. And so, but ultimately safety is the most concerning, and we need to think of the long term. And if we tackle it now, we tackle it prudent, then we will have less long-term effects. And yes, that makes today really difficult to be in. But yeah, it's all about planning. It's about bipartisanship. It's about looking at the industries, looking at also metro areas. You know, I think about New Jersey and how how densely populated it is. It might have top-down measures, but with Florida, you have the Panhandle, which is ruby red. You have the center of the state, which is growing and diversifying and has many different demographics there. You have South Florida, that's very international. The whole state, it might not be the best idea to look at it statewide, but you know, individual area-wise, and it's ultimately going to be up to the politicians to decide.
Yeah. So I'm a pretty good mathematician and not a bad university administrator. So take this for what it's worth. But I think this opening up is inevitably going to be experimental.
Yes.
We'll try it in certain places. We'll see what works. We see, unfortunately, I predict we'll see what doesn't work. I hope not. Right. But what I do hope is that from this series of sort of local regional experiments, we can figure out an intelligent way to keep people safe, but also revive the economy and get moving, because we need to be able to do both. You know, my 2 cents.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, as I talk to people who are younger, you know, younger millennials and the generation after that, whatever it's called, the I generation, they have not been through a crisis yet. And this crisis is unlike any other crisis. And so there's a lot of anxiety in the air, because you're not only talking about businesses closing and people losing their job and economic uncertainty, but you're also talking about people's health. And both of those things hit hard. Hit home very, very, very hard. And so for those who have never even been through a crisis, I can only imagine what they're feeling, what they're thinking. And so what we've been trying to tell the people that we work with, my employees here and the people that I'm in touch with, is that yes, there is another side to this, but it will be, unfortunately, a little experimental. We're going to have to watch each region as it opens, and what are the kind of the do's and the don'ts. And, you know, meditation is a wonderful thing.
That's right. So how would I say this? So, you know, I think we know a lot about how universities work and the ins and the outs and so on, but inevitably there's a kind of insider view. And I've learned to value external perspectives. So I would be grateful to if you could give us a little scan of how you think this whole set of events is affecting higher education.
So very much so. I mean, I think schools, even before government started the shelter in place, they were being sent home. And so we're seeing things change on so many different fronts. Those universities that already had a virtual platform found the transition to all virtual, on the scale from 1 to 10, a little bit easier than not. Those that did not have a big online presence had to build it quickly over spring break, and then start using it. That has been a transition for the students. It's been a transition for the faculty. I've talked to some educators who faculty still go into the office to shoot their videos because they don't feel comfortable doing it from home. And, it's trial by fire. There you go. It's been trial by fire. And those that had a foundation found it a little bit easier. Those that didn't had to adapt. Like you mentioned before, Rutgers is going to have a commencement with virtually, and that's every education platform right now. In the Philadelphia metro area, I believe there's well over 100 colleges and universities. Maybe we're going to see some M&A activity because those colleges that weren't used to operating on a shoestring budget that now had to pay a whole lot of money to convert online. They might see some real struggles there. There will be some universities. I talked to Chris Domes from Newman University, and they're actually decreasing tuition for their online courses this summer, and that might be extended further. And so tuition is going to change as for some of the universities online. And then you're going to see competitors that might not have been competitors before. Everyone knows Phoenix University is the online institution. Same with New Hampshire University.
Right.
You will now see traditional universities competing with these online universities, and how will that competition affect business models and students? We'll see. I had another discussion that even with another educator, even though online universities can be taken anywhere, the courses you can take them from anywhere, usually people go locally. So if you look at both New Hampshire and Phoenix, most of their students are actually locally. So perhaps that won't change as much, but this is uncharted waters for educators. And
it really is.
Yeah.
My own initial sense is that, calculus at Rutgers is pretty much the same as calculus at Harvard, as the calculus at University of Central Florida. But so there is the content of the course that is, in some sense, possible to put online in an effective and efficient way. But there's also the collegiality of learning, how you interact with people of your cohort, older ones, faculty. It's there is something ineffable about the educational effect of the face-to-face.
And you bring up a good
I don't
point.
think that's going away, but online is here to stay. And so there's going to be a new normal mixture of those things. That's my prediction.
And you bring up a good point about the collegiality, but also labs and graduate work. There are some practicum that has to be done in person. I spoke to Donna Nikitas, who is the president of the dean of the School of Nursing at Rutgers Camden.
Yes.
And we were talking
She's
about—
fabulous, by the way.
Yes, oh, she's wonderful. And we had a great discussion about how are we teaching the nurses of tomorrow in this new reality. They still need to be a resident. And so what does that mean moving forward? If we're doing a large majority online, you still need to have the in-person practicum. So there will be some real adaptations needed to be made. But then also you still have to have that in-person part for depending on your study.
That's right. So Abby, this has been fabulous. And I want to ask you one last question before we segue to some questions from the audience. So in your career so far with Capital Analytics, so like, I assume you have more than one success. So what's your favorite one?
So I think I think if you talk to any entrepreneur, they say that there's the two most difficult times of starting a business. One is starting the business, and that was definitely long days and some very difficult days. And the other one is scaling up. And I finally hit that scaling up moment about 2 years ago. And yeah, it's been trying. It's been difficult to get the right people on board. And remember, we were just in a really strong economic moment, so to find those right people was very, very difficult. And then COVID hit, and here I am with, I think, a unpredictable third difficult time for an entrepreneur, getting through COVID and knowing how to innovate and knowing how to adapt. And I think the success story that I have felt is that while this has been the most difficult time, absolutely for me, and having to have those hard discussions and having to furlough and everything like that, that the success story has been watching my team that is on board with me right now step up in so many ways. And without me asking, putting in those long hours and taking the criticism quickly so that they can be as good as they possibly can in a new, uncharted way of doing business. And that just amazes me every day and energizes me to come in and having the conversations with the business community and knowing that we're all in it together and we're all trying to get to the other side of it. It has been incredibly challenging, but also very rewarding. And I can't thank my team enough and feel so blessed to have them with me.
So it looks like a beautiful day in Miami, and I can confirm it's a beautiful day here in East Millstone, New Jersey. Abby, it's been great. So I think we have some time for questions and answers, and I think it's over to you, Sam.
Thank you both so much. That was wonderful. Before I start with the Q&A, I just want to let everyone know that if you don't feel comfortable asking your questions out loud, please send a message and I can read it for you, which is what I'm going to do now. So the first question, do you have any ideas on how some of the municipalities will be addressing the budget impacts felt by lost tourism?
Yes, actually. So there's the state impact, and then there's also the local level impact. The state will really have to address the revenue loss from the bed tax and all the taxes collected from visitors, from tourism, because that is a large part of the budget. So they are absolutely going to have to rework that and see what we can do now. Because again, this is not just happening now, it's going to be happening in the future. We're still looking at how shelter in place and people will not be feeling as comfortable to fly. Will flights be able to be full? And we're watching some municipalities start to pivot really quickly. I spoke with the city of Clearwater, and they're going to be starting a campaign on drive vacations. So looking within the state of Florida to have people drive. I spoke with another gentleman who has canceled his European vacation, and he's coming to Miami. So all he has to do is drive down from Tampa. So we'll see more drive vacations and still support the bed tax in some way. However, local municipalities, depending on the structure, are making most of their budgetary considerations off of property taxes, and that has already been decided for 2020. The only thing there would be is if people wouldn't be able to pay their taxes and what to do in that sense. But those budgets are relatively kept in place for the remainder of the year.
Great, thank you. And what have you been hearing from leaders in different cities about their plans to open, and what cities do you feel will be able to open more efficiently?
Yeah, I think a lot of the local municipalities and on the city level are looking to the county and looking to the state, and that's Jersey down to Florida. They're ready to put in place the measures that they need to, always considering safety first. That's everyone's top concern. No one has never not mentioned safety, but they're all looking towards the county and the state government to really dictate what that path looks like. If you look at Governor DeSantis's executive board that he just put in place, a lot of them are city officials from a variety of different areas from the state, so they can help weigh in. You did see the Jacksonville beaches open. Too much criticism. So, you know, it's like I discussed with Peter, we're going to see a little bit of a flow of different cities making the decisions, different states making different decisions, and trial and error. I haven't talked to a single city or county official personally that is ready to open in the next couple of weeks. They're all trying to be very thoughtful, which I think is 100% needed, very calculated, but those plans are still yet to be released. So we're kind of waiting to look and to analyze.
Thank you. I have another question that I'm going to read. What advice would you give to graduating seniors who are nervous about finding a job in this economy and during or after this pandemic?
That's a good question, because it is uncertain. And again, it's uncertainty that many people who have even been through an economic crisis before would have a difficult time navigating right now. I will say a couple things. Number one is, I know that you just completed your studies, but continuing study in a very specific field would be a great time to do it. I was speaking to the gentleman who runs Colliers down for the state of Florida, and he was saying that this is a perfect time for brokers to educate themselves on every aspect of commercial real estate, so that when flow picks back up, you have experience of all different kind of scenarios. So that could be an opportunity. There are still companies hiring. When I was speaking to the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce today, we went through a report that he just released, and although hiring has slowed, there is still a portion of companies who are hiring. And so maybe it's not exactly the field that you thought you'd go into right after college. Maybe you're just trying something out for a little bit, but you're still gaining experience. That does matter a lot to employers. And this will be the time that people remember that and say, I saw you graduate in 2020. I know what you graduated into, but I see you took this job that isn't exactly your career path. But what mattered is that you had the guts and the willpower and the desire to get experience anyway, and then return back to it. I know as someone who hires all the time, I look for that gusto in a person that might not always translate into exactly what I need them to do, but the fact that they were looking to get themselves experience in other ways, it will carry.
Great, thank you. Okay, I have another one for you. Do you see any other business industry other than education which will be deeply transformed by the corona crisis, and in what way?
Let's see. I think, well, so healthcare was already on its way to telemedicine, but I think that what we've seen already is a huge push into telemedicine. I met with Stephen Klasko, who's the CEO of Jefferson Health, and they had put a huge investment in telemedicine before, and it was being used in the background. But now they switched it on, and everything from OBGYN to pediatrician visits, you can do a lot of that via telemedicine. And so that will be something that healthcare systems will, if they're not already using it in a profound way, I think that it will carry over. Then I think about like exercise classes. Who is taking exercise classes like they are now in digital platforms? And now that's what everyone is doing because you can't go to your classes. Why shouldn't that continue? Even though you have the live version, still have a camera in the background and have your online audience. So not just exercise classes, but I think that you will see that in other industries as well. And then I just think about entrepreneurialism in general. It is such a backbone to diversifying an economy, and entrepreneurs are so important for innovation, adaptation, looking at a problem and changing it. And so we're going to see lots of other ideas come out of this. I know ourselves, we're very much still in startup mode, and our adaptation is essential to what we're doing right now. And so, but I also think about like 1 year ago, we were already 33% lower in terms of entrepreneurialism than we were prior. And so that was already on a decline. This is happening. People are watching this economic downturn. They're watching businesses not get funded. They're watching all this uncertainty, and they're going to be deterred from starting businesses. So that's something that I hope that government officials and the business community in general is really paying attention to, because we do need that startup in all the metro areas that we cover in the United States in general, to not only help us through an economic crisis, but help us on the other side of the economic crisis. If we lose that, if we deter entrepreneurials, then that will be something that hurts us in the long term.
I actually have one that kind of piggybacks off of that. What does your experience in studies predict the impact on small businesses, and will they survive?
Yeah, so I mean, depending on the study that you're looking at, things are changing all the time. We're seeing anywhere between 20 to 30% of businesses that close right now will not come back, and the vast majority of them are small businesses. And again, small businesses make up the large majority of businesses in the United States. And so that's going to hit big, and it's happened so fast that I think when we're on the other side of this, it will be really noticeable to everyone. So the first rendition of the PPP, the Payment Protection Program, was really important. And I think that although there's a lot of criticism around its rollout and access to capital, we relatively did it very fast. And considering all the partisanship that we're seeing in DC to get that rolling, that was really important. And now we see the second rendition of it coming out. There's more a stimulus package than there was in the first the economic recession that we saw prior. So that motivation to get money in the pockets of small businesses is strong. It is important. We need probably more of it, more waves of funding. So it should be monitored. It should be a deep concern of everyone to make sure that small businesses survive or can get back on their feet later.
What do you think will be the impact on commercial real estate as we emerge from a lockdown culture through a transition back to what will be the new normal?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that a lot, and I think that you're going to see, number one, well, first of all, I think that the majority of the people that I talk to, while they enjoy their work from home, they want back in the office. So I think that people will want to go back in the office, but they'll want to go back in the safest way possible. So before, it was all about open plans, and you think of the WeWorks and the co-working spaces where there's just people were toppled all over each other. And that's not going to be around in that way anymore. I don't think people will feel comfortable. How do you know who's sick and when and how? Did they touch a place? I'm not too sure. So we might see return to smaller offices, maybe with glass versus a strong cubicle feeling. Maybe it will be a partial cubicle kind of structure. Maybe we will see less WeWorks and co-working places, or again, a reformatting of how it looks. I think that we will see more offering of part work from home and part from the office, because people have learned that you can work from home and it not deter business, but people still want that human connection. So I think that there will still be work from the office. We might see more shift work, so that maybe half the employees work from 7 until 3 and the others work from 10 until later, so that there's less people in the space at any given moment. So and then I also think there will be more technologies around no touch. So doors opening by sensor, bathroom doors opening by sensor, so that there's less touch in the office.
I had one more question, and you kind of answered most of it with that answer. But what about testing, like taking people's temperatures, things like that before going in, or future?
Yeah, I think there will be a transition where some businesses, depending on maybe something more like restaurants or heavy populated retail outlets, supermarkets and stuff like that, that you'll still have capacity protocols. There could be some businesses that take temperature. I think that when you're going to like an outpatient or a hospital, they'll continue to take temperatures outside. They'll definitely limit the amount of people that can go in. So for example, I have an 11-month-old tomorrow. She is 11 months. And we have to take her to a variety of appointments. And right now we can only have one parent and one child. I think that will continue. So will that continue for 6 months, a year, eternity? I think that is yet to be understood. But I could definitely see temperature measures, capacity measures, limiting of people measures for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was our last question. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And of course, thank you, Abby and Dean March. This was really informative, especially as a person who recently moved to Florida.
I really appreciate you guys having me on. I really enjoyed this. And again, I'm very proud New Jersey and I'm very proud Rutgers alumni. And to be a part of this has been such a delight.
And we're proud of you, Abby. We're proud of you. Thanks for joining us. It was really swell.
Absolutely.
Yeah. See you again in person one day.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
The last time I saw you down here, I was pregnant.
I know.
They have to come back down again. I have to come back up to Jersey.
I'd love to meet Layla.
Flights permitting.
Yep, there you go. Okay, good to see you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.